Hey there guys, what's going on? So here we are back once again in our familiarly comfortable YouTube abode to yet again talk about that beautiful, strange, crazy, mystical realm that is music. We're getting into the last days of summer now and are starting to transition towards that unnaturally scary time of fall panic and the hourglass of time running through our collective fingers as another year draws to a close. But instead of that ultra-depressing philosophical conundrum I just brought up, we're going to do something much happier, like not using the word conundrum again, for one. In today's installment, we're going to discuss one of my favorite solo artists, who quickly became one of my new favorite solo artists in 2011 after releasing a beautifully muted LP that absolutely rocked my ears by not really doing much rocking at all. It was a fine turn by a grizzled rocker that focused less on the rock and more on the gristle, and led to a surprisingly stark emotional center that highlighted one of my more beloved Dark Horse favorites of that year. Today we're going to talk about Mascis and the spiritual successor to 2011's Several Shades of Why that is the next chapter tied to a star. It is far and away the shining star, bad pun alert inserted here, of this release week, and one that I've been energized to discuss here on the Vinyl Corner since it was first announced. So, without further ado, it's time to get down to the bare, introspective bones of the ultra-plaintive soul, and talk a little tied to a star. Immediately, it has to again be noted just how really excited I've been to get to talk about Tied to a Star, and how I've had more thoughts doing laps and swimming around in my head about this album than I pretty much know what to put in words here. Suffice it to say, if you were looking forward to Mascis delving deeper into this solo side of his sound after 2011's outstanding Several Shades of Why, Tied to a Star manages to hit that mark in several lovingly landed ways. Star is simultaneously a follow-up and an expansion. Like the next chapter that doesn't take much of a page break from the book going on, but opens up the overarching theme of its driving plot as well. It's an old friend that still hits that diver's swim into the pool of melancholy that's the spark of so much of Jay's deeply melodic and often introspective work, but feels bigger doing it. Tracks like the instrumental Drifter and Heal the Star take a trip into a spirit that's sharper, not quite the grizzled rocker and not the hushed songwriter so much as this sort of enlightened traveler. A Middle Eastern desert trek of sorts, buried between the layers of warm blankets and sheets of songs like Me Again and Wide Awake, if you will. In fact, Me Again feels like the closest companion to the songs that emerged on Several Shades of Why, and it brought back one of my favorite observations about listening to Mascis' stripped-down side. Namely, how much Jay just doesn't automatically seem like this deeply dark and soul-spilling guy buried beneath these huge mega amps and unassuming interviews, and yet he writes songs like Me Again that instantly take hold to create this entirely separate story and separate picture of what you thought you knew. And that's when Jay continues to be at his best in this setting, less confrontational and more openly confessional. Songs like Wide Awake feel like a nighttime serenade of every insecure thought passing through an insomniac's shattered shell. Immensely lonely, but still somehow just managing to keep that chill at bay. There are spots that seem to fall a little by the forgettable wayside in the tone of Tied to a Star, but it's that chill and that mumbling uncertainty of honesty that keep it so firmly on point where it's at its best. And when all else fails, it's a rush to hear the acoustics of tracks like And Then or Trailing Off, trail off into some bone-broke ripping solos or electric frills dotting the landscape. So while I don't ultimately feel quite as strongly about Tied to a Star as I did about its debut predecessor Several Shades of Why, it's a long overdue pleasure to return to the quieter side of Mascis. Hearing that falsetto-dipped weariness play against tightly wound guitars, punching solos, and a background of accompaniment was just what I was looking to find from this announcement. It's a grower, and I'd expect its layers of landscape to only expand further the more that I get the opportunity to listen to it. So for right now, I give it an 8 out of 10. My favorites from this one are the aforementioned Me Again, Wide Awake, Heal the Star, and Trailing Off, most definitely accompanied by the heat of the strong initial single Every Morning. While this is certainly not the monolith, riff-grabbing sound of Dinosaur Jr., or what most veteran rock listeners would most likely expect from typical Mascis work, I think that at this point he's carved out a really brilliant solo side career for himself in this genre. Rather than just feeling like a one-off side project, it feels like something he's really put strong roots down into that lets his voice expand more deeply into a singer-songwriter's level of contemplation. like the sort of feeling you'd get from a guy who's had a long career for himself and has taken this opportunity in this genre and this perspective to really take some time to reflect and omit the things that you can't really say so much in bigger and louder and more expansive setups. And I think he does it well. Much like his initial vocals sound like Eddie Vedder, Mascis does the restrained very, very tactfully and to the point and very effectively. Even if, unlike Vedder, the ukulele is not included. But that's it, and that's all for me here, guys, with my video review of the brand new J Mascis Tied to a Star album, which you can find here in my hands, but more likely you'll find it in local record stores near you, on Amazon.com, over on J Mascis' website through the label, many other sources with this great artwork by Mark Spusta, as I previously discussed in my vinyl unboxing video. If you did not see it, go and watch it, of course. But I thank you for tuning into this review. It is the first really big one of a major trifecta that's coming up here for me on my channel. I'd like to do some other things in between now and the rest of those, but this is the first part and the first major installment. There's definitely going to be a little bit more to come here with the J Mascis Tied to a Star release, but I'm glad that you tuned into the most important part of it. I'm very excited about this. Thank you all for watching, and of course, stay tuned for much more.